I'm now quite happy to start the next round after we hear these 6 presentations about the local perspective to restore goals and restore practices from all our local speakers, and to the gap analysis discussion with the topic how far the local situation is from the restore goals and practices. I'm inviting the local speakers that we had this afternoon. I'm inviting Alexander Hollberg, Andreas, Eggertsen, Taylor, Pia. Luca, you're here with us. We're happy if you can.
Yes, I am.
And Marwa is here in the room with me. We will have some discussion questions that I'm posing to each and everybody of you, but I'm also inviting the audience to ask questions. Please, just if you have a question, ask them in the chat. And we have Jaron Jonas here with us, who's going to keep track of the questions coming in, and then either unmute you or read out the questions to us in order to answer. The first question I actually want to ask to Alexander. Alex, you're an expert for LCA, BIM, and implementation of LCA and tool development. And for that, I would like to ask you, how do you think LCA can be used in order to make sustainability a standard in each construction project?
Yeah, thank you for the good question. And well, we can discuss all afternoon only about this, but I think it's one way to, in a way, a general shifting from this focus on energy efficiency and operation we saw the last maybe 30 years towards a more holistic perspective, including the whole life cycle. And this becomes more complex in a way, and we need more data. And I think that's the chance of digitalization in general, and often it's referred to BIM to help us manage the data and simplify the use of data also in the early design phases. So I think this parallel development of more digital design processes and this more holistic perspective can go along, and then will help us that it's not such an extra effort that I need a consultant and pay, I don't know, 20,000 euros to get a complete LCA, but it becomes a standard procedure, such as calculating an energy performance certificate has become a standard procedure.
And then a follow-up, as we hear at the Restore conference, do you think there are some ways how we can introduce regenerative principle to be implemented in LCA? Is there anything that you could imagine to be done, how LCA can be used to reach these more regenerative sustainability goals?
Yeah, I think there's still a big need for development from the method of LCA, but also like Pia's chart a lot to say, okay, we have some positive impact. And here, for example, through PV generation on site, but also here LCA can find or help to find the trade-off look of when is the energy that was needed to produce the PV module actually amortized? What are the carbon emissions? That depends, of course, how I place the PV module on the building, where this was manufactured, and what's the electricity mix in the country. So we also need, if we want to assess the positive aspects, for LCA can be one quantitative method to do this. I think there are always some positive aspects, especially social ones, that are difficult to quantify. And it's not the need to force everything into this LCA method, but it's one approach to extend this also, especially with this module D, to look at also recycling or reuse that Marwa described. How can we use the material that was already there, or go towards more refurbishment of existing buildings instead of building new? All of these things can be included in LCA, but it's not yet that standardized as we saw for the life cycle modules A to C.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. But you already kind of built me a bridge, and I want to use this bridge to jump on a little more on the materials perspective and ask to Marwa, who's sitting here with me. as we've seen from your presentation, and as you are a researcher for solutions with new and, let's say, old building materials and techniques, I would like to ask you what you think when you're looking at the Nordic context. How far do we have come in order to implement true and regenerative sustainability in today's building projects in terms of materials? I'm just throwing the keywords concrete, steel, cross-laminated timber in there, but you feel free to answer according to your feeling.
Well, at least we are trying. If I look like only or zoom in on the Swedish context, we are trying hard, but we are still far when it comes to using bio-based material, for example, or focusing more on using natural materials compared to industrial materials. Other Nordic countries are a little bit ahead, like Norway and Denmark. But I think we need to do a lot of efforts, and we need to really work quickly on the building standards, building codes, and building regulations to allow for wider use of natural materials, especially bio-based material. Of course, wood is widely used, especially in the northern part of Sweden. But we need to look at other alternative materials like earth and natural fibers, or bio-based materials, as I said. They are also stemmed from the traditions in the southern part of Sweden, for example. We always think that all of Sweden only use wood as construction materials in all times, but that's not the case. There are plenty of other alternative materials that we can look at. I don't know if that answers or touched at least part of the question.
Yeah, I do think it touches the question, because there is no full answer. This is the same as Alex said, that it doesn't really work out to give an answer to this that quickly and in general. But I want to take also a follow-up and ask what you think when it comes to technologies. Is there also something that we here in the Swedish or maybe the Nordic context, what we can do where we can get better using maybe more passive system, bioclimatic design, and so on?
Yeah, I think we need to do more on it, like working on from the beginning on our curriculums at architecture schools and engineering schools. We need to equip first the coming generation with these tools to be able to design buildings that really apply this kind of passive systems. And then later on, that will be a kind of an easy way to have it implemented in real life, and try to find ways to work together with contractors and investors in applying those systems. If we want to apply now passive solutions, and if we don't know how to design passive solutions, how we will be able to do it. And people sometimes mix between passive houses as that kind of certificates, or you are complying with passive house standards and apply passive solutions. In many cases, they are not synonymous. I can be like the building can be passive house certified, but not necessarily that all the systems inside the house are mainly using passive means for heating, cooling, and natural ventilation and daylight. So we need to start from the beginning with like our curriculum, education. So you equip those kind of like architects, building engineers, and then it will be naturally introduced in the construction.
I couldn't agree more. But with this, I would also then go over to Luca. And as you're maybe born in the more Mediterranean climate, but since have done quite some research in the Scandinavian climate, that can be kind of rough and tough and cold in the winter and less daylight, and poses some other difficulties than down south in Sicily. I would like to ask you, do you see a mind and awareness shift in the Nordics regarding the implementation of regenerative design principles? This is maybe also linking to your experience in teaching of young professionals.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. I mean, there is no doubt that I think here in Norway there is. This is a central topic, and I think there is a lot of effort from the government to support the initiatives that are willing to lower the impact of the built environment. I think, Norway is a big country, but it's a relatively small population, so it's I think the government is doing very well into trying to implement this. So they support very much this initiative and the research center. So I don't doubt that moving to the north gave some kind of possibilities that were a bit more, maybe, I mean, also Italy, there was a lot of interesting things, but here in Norway, we're a bit more ahead with some part. I think what I want to connect with what Marwa was saying, because I think that is central, that one was saying, starting from students, keeping them with the abilities. And I think that is exactly what I mean, that I think we should not be sure that we don't lose connection with traditional construction system knowledge that was there. I mean, paradoxically, if you measure one of the buildings that Marwa was presenting there, it looks like the solution was there, but now it's not possible to implement, right? So what is the problem there? And obviously related to technical requirements and regulations. So Marwa addressed that very quickly. But there is something that I try to also address in my presentation, and I think it's nice also about relation to the Nordic countries, and that is the need for keeping students with ethical values to me. and there is something that it's much stronger and more difficult in many ways than giving them the technical competence, because ethical values in a way permeate people. And if you give them some sensitivity to the environment, I mean, as this Greta Thunberg and all these things were up in there, that is very much go to the root of the problem, right? I mean, it's just people feel conscious about the environment, then they will act properly and they will look for technical solutions. And obviously, if we take care that the knowledge doesn't disappear, I think we can. I think that will hopefully go forward. That's what I feel. But it's a beautiful discussion. Yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question. I try to connect and relate these different elements according to my experience. Yeah.
No, but I think you answered the question, and you actually already answered my follow-up question that I had to hear. So that is
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would follow this thought a little bit with you, Pia, as you're in charge for development and education of the certification schemes Null CO2 and Green Building at the Sweden Green Building Council. I want to ask you if you think that certification systems are a key to achieving climate goals and to implement regenerative sustainability principles in the built environment.
I think so, because the projects who are doing all these efforts, and I must say the Null CO2 projects are doing a huge effort in transforming the industry, because they have very early and very close contacts with material producers and construction process companies and so on. And all that effort that they put into the project, it's good that they can show it through a certification, and they can get a third-party assessment of their efforts, and they can be sure that all the calculations are done according to proven international standards, etc. So I think it's a quality mark, and it's also a way for them to get some funding back, because they do a large investment, and by certifying a building, they can perhaps get higher rent, or they can get green loans, etc. So it's a good way to get that quality assurance for the project. And I think that's so important when it comes to climate calculations, because we see there's a lot of mistrust today. Everybody thinks that we are trying to deceive them and do some greenwashing calculations, and we get a lot of those discussions. And that's why the certification scheme is so important, that we publish everything. We have published the framework, we have published the manual, we have published the manual also in English, so that everybody can read and make up their opinion about how we calculate things. And I think that's difficult for a company to do themselves, actually, to go on and try to claim that they are climate neutral by just doing calculations in their own way. So I think certification schemes it will be a very good way in the future climate work.
Yeah, thank you very much. Alexander, I'm not sure if you wanted to say something additionally. It looked in your eyes a little bit like you were keen to say something, but
Yeah, because I saw Carlos' comment in the chat, and maybe I jump ahead. We want to go there anyway. Looking at what do we need to scale up this across Europe, and I think that's in a way the projects that Pia showed on a slide. Those are leading the way in the Lighthouse project, and it's great. But I think if to achieve this change in time and the transition, yeah, I think we don't come around either huge financial incentives or mandatory laws from the governments, because I think in the same time that these 11 buildings have been built, I don't know how many buildings have been built the conventional way in Sweden. And at least if we look at the German context with the DGNB, it's still only a small fraction of the whole market. So I think those are needed. They can show the way how it's possible, but then we need something else to bring the rest of the market on the same level.
Yeah, I also totally agree with you. I think that generally is just certifying something is not the job yet well done or completely done. There is something above and beyond the certification that we also have to do. And I think the sustainable development goals, they're quite important to take into consideration. If we are building a building, if we're certifying a building, there's also the sustainability development goal number 4, which asks for quality education, and this kind of applies to everything throughout the construction project. But if we are delivering a very well certified building and we don't have any documentation, we don't have any education, people don't know how to use the functions that are in the systems and are starting to use active systems instead of the passive systems, we haven't achieved the goal that we were reaching for. But anyways, I want to also include you, Andreas, of course. As you presented about the LFM30 roadmap for Malmö, I wanted to ask you, in which way do you think LFM30 can contribute to moving up on the scale of sustainability towards regenerative sustainability rather than just green solutions? We have seen this picture with the scale moving from a less bad version to the true sustainability side today many times. So that's what I'm referring to.
Yes, I would like to start out by the question of scaling up, because we are in a challenge now. We have to do a lot of change and transformation. Change making will have to happen in only 10 years. And we don't know, and that is a huge challenge for practice. So first we have to learn and learn fast. And we are doing that in the local roadmap 2030 with the practitioners. And this is unique. I haven't seen this before, that we have the entire value chain sitting together and going home, doing the homework, meeting up, presenting for each other. And the learning curve is exponential. And I'm really, really thrilled by this, because this gives hope for bringing the knowledge into practice, into all the organizations. And in the building industry in Sweden is very much tied down to huge companies who do a lot of the development. And if the learnings are happening from the inside, connecting the departments who work with the calculations of cost, the project manager, the builders on site, the producers, and the contracting, and all the way up to the environmental department, and bringing that into the mix, showing the way, that is the way we scale up from person to person in the companies, and making change by taking decisions based on calculation methodology. And I've been very inspired by the presentation by Alexander Hollberg on bringing the digital flows. By having a digital infrastructure to speed up these calculations and using that as a communication tool, that is essential for taking conscious step towards actual change. And then I would like to answer your question. I think the real effort from the building industry is to move the resources. The building industry is the biggest financial market in Sweden today. And there's a lot of financial resources, and we have to move them towards the regenerative solutions. And this is a key effort from the LFM30, as I see it, when we start to identify the impact that we have in the building industry and try to find ways to minimizing that. That is the absolute key, but then also find ways and strategies to balancing it so that we become positive from a life cycle perspective.
Yeah, and do you think that we could maybe take the goals of LFM30 and implement them in a larger scale? Do you think this would really help us to make this shift? Because as I think Alexander just said, that there's maybe now 38 companies, they are connected. They all said they're going to build one climate neutral building until 2025. But this doesn't mean that we're really getting somewhere. It just only means that one out of their how many projects is going to be done. So scaling up, implementing this maybe in all of Sweden, implementing it in the Nordics, or making it even a mandatory requirement in the construction sector in the countries. And do you think this would really bring momentum into the shift?
Yes, that is part of the contract of the LFM30, that we sign up for building one building, yes, but we also need to identify the impact from the portfolio, from the entire impact from the business. This is a huge responsibility, because that means that we have to take the learnings from the climate neutral projects that we promised to build, but we bring that into all our other projects so that we reduce, maybe not to net zero, but we have to reduce. And in 2030, the entire portfolio should be climate neutral.
Okay, thank you very much. I have one question left to everybody, but I think we can go for the question in the chat. Can you guide us through?
Yes, sure. Thank you for the great discussion. We had one question from Carlo, but Alexander and Andreas already talked a little bit about that, but maybe other panelists would like to add something up. What do you suggest to scale up the impact of these strategies across Europe? And where do you see the main barriers, such as it can be mainstream thinking, industry reluctance, or policy making, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, we can throw the ball in between. Maybe Luca, you wanna also attach something to the answers that we already heard to this question?
No, I mean, I think yeah, it's a great question. I mean, but it's the difficult one. I think we all touched it there. First of all, it's the question of the technical competence, right? There is a lot of knowledge that it's there. I think Marwa took the one of the vernacular. Be sure that it's not lost and we take there. I was trying to touch on the ethical values and be sure that touching the ethical values is fundamental, because without that, I think it will remain a lot of calculation that will hardly come into the daily practice for everyone. So that one is fundamental. So for me, these two ingredients, technical skills and ethical values, is one way. And I think this Greta Thunberg movement is touching on the ethical values, and that's great, because the young generation is maybe one of the most effective way to be sure we have an impact. Then I think that besides that, I think there is no way to get out of this, that it's, for me, we need the help from governments, and the political will is that what is needed here, because otherwise we cannot cope with the mainstream, let's say. You know, there is a lot of buildings here in Trondheim. Trondheim is growing fast, and there is a lot of the building industry is not able at the moment, it would die at once if it's not for some incentives, because they are too much used to use solutions that have been used in the last 20-30 years, and they don't have the time to think and change this until there is no support from the government. So for me, these three things that I mentioned are ingredients. I don't think at the moment I can think more. I mean, I could talk more, but yeah. I hope this starts the discussion.
Yeah, I think it really triggers something, and also thanks for again mentioning the ethics that are involved in all this, because we kind of could all change our how we are working. We could change it a little bit if this mindset was already implemented, and if it really was already that widely spread. If it was taught in every education, not just in the industry, but also for other people. If this would already be the case, we could be much further up on the scale. Because then it wouldn't necessarily need any certification systems. It wouldn't need any incentives. It's just like, okay, this is the logical thing to do. I cannot do any other way.
I mean, obviously, sorry if I interrupt and I say something. Obviously, this is fundamental. But obviously, in the title of this restore, also there is this regenerative economy, right? That is a crucial thing for the scale up, right? These ethical values, but people still have to live and flourish until we don't manage to connect to the economical system. Obviously, that is problematic, and I'm sure that Carlo and the others, they all knew about that when they chose the title of Restore, let's say, right? Yeah.
We have another question.
Yes, we have another question from Jesse, and it is about steel and glass, which seems to be generally mentioned as either 100% recyclable materials that can be made with renewables or demonized. So what are your thoughts for a more nuanced view from the panelists? And can it be depending on location or the technology that is being used, for example?
And Andreas, is this maybe something that you would have some answers to or some thoughts on?
To be honest, can you put the question again, just so that I can understand exactly? So
the steel and glass seem to generally be mentioned either as 100% recyclable materials that can be made with renewables or demonized. So what is your thought on that? It can be depending on a location or technology.
Yeah, one of the alternatives that we point to when we talk about steel construction is that there is one producer in the Scandinavian countries that have 100% recycled steel in their portfolio. There's still emissions connected to that, of course, but at least there is an alternative to reduce carbon emissions when we use steel. And we hope that more steel producers go in that direction and see that there's a market for recycled and renewable steel. So by creating the market and showing the way by leading examples of companies that take active choices, I think we can integrate steel in our buildings to a limited level. Steel have a huge impact on the climate, so we should be very careful using steel. But to achieve some functions, it might be suitable to use that material. In terms of glass, there's also a development where we see companies who put cradle-to-cradle certified glass products on the market. And of course, we should, from the design perspective, choose that type of glass production. Glass is a very useful material in the building industry, and it allows for daylight and gives insulating properties. So used in the right way, I do think that glass is a material for the future.
Okay, thank you very much. we're at the end of the time, but I think Daniel, you will get all the time that you need. I want to go one more time all around and ask a question to all the panelists. And that question is maybe a little bit difficult. I still want to make it a quick answer round. And I would like to ask you if you think there is anything that can be a tool, mindset, building material, knowledge, or piece of advice that you think each and everyone in the building sector should know, use, follow in order to achieve regenerative sustainability in the built environment?
That's a complex one. I like something, I think Martin, who said it in his early presentation, when he said, like, I can't formulate it in the way he said it, but we need more like openness, and we look at things with love and care. We look at our environment with a different eye, that we care more for the current and for the future generation. We shouldn't be that greedy using all these kind of industrial materials and high-tech energy abusive systems, and we ignore some other alternative usage because there are tycoons, as Andreas said, there are really tycoons in the market, control the construction industry, and they are the one who manage everything. We need really to force some other alternative safe routes for the future. I don't know which tools, which...
yeah, this is just something, piece of advice, tool, whatever you think is necessary. Pia, can I ask you to continue?
Yeah, I can give you a short answer to a very long question. You need determination. You just need to decide, make up your mind, we will do this, and the rest will follow. It's what we see in our null CO2 projects. They decide we will do this, and they are doing it. And afterwards they say, oh, it was not that complicated. It didn't take that much more hours. It was easier than we thought. Of course, it's an investment, but in the next project, the investment will be smaller because you know the process. So determination, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Luca, you want to go next?
I was going on a different direction, but I think it's I liked a lot the answer given till now. I think I was thinking very maybe naive. My naive answer was nature, ecology. What everyone should understand is that the built environment is part of an ecological system. It relates to nature. And that was my short answer. Yeah, but okay. I like everything else when I listen.
And let's jump over to Gothenburg to Alex.
Well, I like the two from Mia and Luca better, but I would say that in a way, openness and also braveness to go new parts, because even if I stated many times before, we still hear a lot. We've always done it like this in the building sector. So while innovation is always appreciated, there's such a risk averseness or so much fear. So we need to just appreciate new ideas and then also be brave enough to go this way. And then, as Pia said, determined enough to follow it through.
Yeah. And Andreas, is there something left for you, or do you just want to agree to everything?
I would like to add that I would like to see a future where we base the buildings on real needs. And this is tricky, of course, but base the intentions of the built environment on people's real needs. Bring them to the design drawing table and engage the users and build dreams together that are good for the individuals, for the people on the planet and nature within the boundaries of the circular economy. Kate Raworth has defined the donut economy, and by embracing that thought, I think we can make change together fast that will benefit more.
Yeah. Good conclusion point. Thank you so much, and thank you to all the panelists and to all of you who presented earlier, also for being here today with us.